to Talk with Olena podcast, a podcast for immigration practitioners in Canada. Today we have our guest speaker, Josh from Visto AI. I'm super pumped to jump into conversation with him because Josh has a background of managing his own immigration practice as an immigration lawyer in Toronto. And also he transitioned to be a tech CEO. And now he's managing a tech company called Visto that provides software for immigration practitioners. So I can't wait to learn more about his business journey. So let's jump into it. But just before that, I want to remind you guys that my RCIC business coaching is going to start its new intake for fall cohorts. So fall 2024, we're going to start in September our new cohort of RCIC students. And I'm going to coach you guys to learn more about managing your business, grow your business, and hopefully grow your profits in your business. So if you are interested in RCIC business coaching, if that's something that you think may benefit your business, you can sign up for the wait list down below. Now let's jump into it and let's learn from Josh. Welcome to Talk with Olena podcast. And today we have our special guest. And please meet Josh from Visto. Josh, how are you doing today?
Hey, Olena, I'm doing very well. Thank you for having me on the show, and I'm excited to chat.
Thank you for coming. Well, this is your second guest of our season 2 podcast. So I'm trying to bring in some guests from our space, immigration space, just to see some insights from other practitioners. And I'm super interested in just learning about different business owners' journeys, how they manage their practices, what lessons they have learned in their businesses. I've known you for a while now. I know you started as an immigration lawyer, just practicing as, taking immigration files, but you don't do that anymore, right? You don't take immigration files anymore. Is that right?
That's correct. I do still maintain my status, so I am still, by trade, an immigration lawyer. I'm in good standing with the Law Society of Ontario. Haven't touched a file in about 4 years, and we'll obviously get into why. And quite frankly, I don't miss it too much. So
really?
Yeah.
Well, to be honest, that's my kind of a main question of the podcast, but let's get back to that. So let's start from the beginning. You got your immigration law, I guess, bar exam license. And then did you start practicing immigration law right away, or did you try other different fields first?
Yeah, not right away. And it's a good way to start the conversation, I guess, because when you get your law degree, it's not in any one type of law, right? You can take specific classes that you really want to focus on in law school, but we all graduate with the same degree, right? You get the Juris Doctor, and you can practice any type of law, which is kind of crazy if you think about it. And so I'm in Ontario, and in Ontario, the first thing you have to do is, well, I guess not first, but in order to actually be called to the bar in Ontario, you have to article and you have to pass the bar exam. An article basically means a paid internship under the tutelage of a lawyer. So I did my articling at a medium-sized, pretty broad-range law firm. They actually did no immigration. Mm-hmm. And I ended up doing, I dabbled a little bit because I was trying to get some tastes of different areas of the law. I did a little bit of real estate, a little bit of wills and estates, a little bit of corporate, but I ended up spending most of my time doing civil litigation. And to make a long story short, I really didn't like it. And we can talk about why if you want, but long story short is it is not like Suits, right? It is not glamorized like in Hollywood or whatever. And I didn't like it. And so I didn't go back to the firm when I finished my articling because I really wasn't passionate about any of those areas of law. And what ended up happening was I didn't know what I wanted to do. I'd never taken immigration law in law school. That firm didn't do any immigration. Quite frankly, I didn't know much at all about it. And what ended up happening, total fluke, is a good friend of mine who I grew up with reached out to me and said, "Hey Josh, I know you're kind of not sure what you want to do next. My dad has been an immigration lawyer for decades. He's retiring, he's closing his law firm, but he would love to mentor or, work with a junior lawyer who's maybe up and running or getting started. He doesn't want to do file work, but he'd be a great resource for anybody, who's trying to make a name in the industry." And again, I'll make a long story short, and we can dig deeper if you want. I did a little bit of research. I talked to him a little bit, tried to learn I went on the Canada.ca website. I didn't know what immigration law was. And I ended up deciding to take the plunge, take the chance. And I started my own practice. This was about 8 years ago. And the rest was history. And, we can talk next steps from there or wherever you want to go as a jump off point.
Yeah. So that was, you said 8 years ago. So that would have been 2016, right?
I think it was the summer of 2017.
Okay.
So 7 years ago, because we're filming this in, summer of 2024, and time sure does fly, right? As they say.
So that means that you were in immigration business for about 3-4 years, right? Doing your own immigration practice.
Yeah, I practiced for about 3-4 years before the next step took place, shall we say.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And during those, and that was, I have to say, the most fun time in immigration law to start practicing.
That's part of why I said at the beginning, I don't miss the file work, because right now, and we'll get into this, I work with immigration firms, right? I talk to consultants and lawyers all day. And seeing in the news and hearing what they have to go through, I'm like, I don't want to use the word easy per se, but you can probably relate to this. Those were the glory days, 2017 to 2020, pre-COVID. It was pretty easy, right? Yeah. Express entry scores were low. Everything was processed pretty quickly. Obviously not everything, but especially compared to today, express entry was 6 months. GTS was a month. It was a great time. I hate to say this for the practitioners listening right now. It was a fantastic time to practice, but very lucky, very lucky.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. But there was another side of the coin, which was that it was just so much of burnout in the industry, especially in 2020, 2021, when it was literally too many files for all the immigration lawyers or RCICs that I know. And I know just so many people that went through burnout because they couldn't manage their practices with the amount of, it was just open door policy, right? Which is great for business if you know how to manage that.
It's a good problem to have, right? If you look at the alternative, I think the two factors at play there are, number one, not just a lot of file work, but going through COVID and all of the craziness that brought, right?
Yeah.
All the changes, going back to that period, 2017 to 2020, you didn't have to keep that updated with the news. Nothing happened, right? Okay, every year you get the levels plan. Okay, every 2 weeks there's an express entry draw, but the numbers were stable. Okay, here and there there's a new pilot opening. All of a sudden COVID hits. Every 2 weeks, every 4 weeks, bing, bang, boom, private extension, exception program, a pilot for this, you know what I mean? So now you have a part-time job just keeping up with the news and what the heck the new laws are. And then, so the second point too is, and this is something I learned the hard way if we go back to the beginning of my story, I didn't know how to scale a business, right? Looking back now, and I say that's a great problem to have, because if you're bringing in cash flow, you can scale a business, right? If you're getting a lot of clients and you're setting up yourself and your business for success, because a law firm, whether you're a consultant, lawyer, accountant, it's a business. You can call it whatever you want, right? They have all these fancy names, especially in law, right? They like using fancy names to make things sound fit. You're running a business. It's got revenue, it's got expenses, and it's got income, or net income, right? It's not rocket science. And so that's part of why I eventually moved on from building a traditional practice, because I was like, number one, I didn't really want to build a huge law firm and manage so many people and train and all the shtick that comes with that. And number two, I didn't see anything that made it easy, right? There were no good tools, platforms, software, automation, AI that helped you do it a little bit bigger. And I'm interested to hear from you. Maybe you can relate. In law school, they don't teach us anything about building and running a business, right? And maybe it's the same in the program that you have to take. But if you're especially new to the industry, you're starting a law firm, you're trying to grow it, you've got 101 problems and more. And then things actually start going well, you're getting all these files, but you've never scaled a business. You've never scaled operations before. It's not easy, especially if you don't have good tools, people, processes, and stuff like that. So anyways, we can get into that, but...
No, it's totally like it's such a different skill set that you have to have and learn, and just knowledge base that you have to get into to scale the business and to build, not necessarily, when I say scale the business, I don't mean necessarily like grow this huge giant immigration firm, but no, just make the sustainable business to bring you sustainable, money to your life that you don't burn out every 5 seconds like a lot of us do, right? And it's such a different skill set than the skill set that we learn in terms of dealing with immigration law and dealing with files and actually providing a good, competent service to clients. So you have these two hats that you have to wear, at least two. As business owners, we have to wear probably many more, but you have these two hats, and it's really, really, really difficult. So for you, what was, I don't know if you remember this, but what was kind of like a last straw when you said, like, you know what, that's it, like I'm quitting?
I remember it like it was yesterday. And at the time, one thing I did right by total fluke is I niched down. And I don't think enough immigration law firms specifically do this. Yeah. Especially when you're new, I get it. You got to pay the bills. You're taking any file type you can get.
Well, you also probably want to try different things when you're new, right? Like you want to understand what you want to
see what you like.
So that's fine. But yeah, I totally agree. Like eventually you have to niche down.
Yes. So I niched down pretty deep into tech, meaning I was doing like 90% of my practice was global talent stream. So I was networking and signing up, tech startups from across the country or from abroad that were expanding into Canada. And I was helping them do global talent stream LMIAs and obviously the work permits. And then the other 10% was when those workers would come back to me for PR. And then I'd have a sprinkle, a TRV here and there, a spousal here and there, right? Now there was a pro and a con to niching down. There are more than one of each, but I'll keep it simple. The pro was I got really freaking good and fast at doing GTS. Nobody knew it better. I knew every question. I could walk you through the LMI form without looking at it, right? Like you get so good at doing that one thing and knowing what might go wrong and what ESDC wants to say. Okay, the question asks that, but they want this, you know what I mean? And so that was great because I was actually working extremely efficiently. I automated the crap, pardon my French, out of my processes, and I was making really good dollars per hour. And this is what most practitioners don't think about. If you're not working efficiently, we work in a fixed fee environment, most of us, right, Olena? Yeah. Maybe some people charge hourly, but I know the majority charge fixed fee.
Yeah.
If it takes you 10 hours to do a file and you're charging $3,000, you're making $300 an hour, right? If you can spend 5 less hours on that file, you're working at $600 an hour. You just doubled your bottom line, right? Irregardless of expenses, that, now that you get what I'm saying. So that was great. I was running a really lean operation, making good dollars per hour, blah, blah, blah. The problem was that I got bored because all I was doing was filling out the same forms and the same. So what happened was I woke up and I knew I had to file a work permit because we got the LMI approval the day before. Like I said, these were the days when the GTS LMI, 10 to 14 days, no problem. And then the work permits too. Didn't matter what country you submitted it to. The work permits were 2 weeks. It was incredible. Maybe one day we'll get back. And I just remember it was specifically $12.95. I started having nightmares about $12.95 because at the time, there was no, I was like most practitioners. I would send a Google form to my client and they'd fill it out and I'd review everything and copy paste and review and validate the $12.95. And I woke up and like the thought of 12, I don't know how this is, maybe this is weird. I'm sure immigration practitioners can relate to this. Nobody else could.
No.
The thought of $12.95 in my head like gave me a stomach ache. I was like, I can't do this. I cannot do this again. You know what I mean?
Like,
Why did I go
physically like filling it out, or like repetition part, or what freaked you out?
Yeah, it just, the big thing for me, Olena, was how did I spend all that time and money on schooling to be filling out a PDF?
12.
Copy pasting a PDF, right? This is not, like, it's not rocket science. You're using a little bit, but not too much brain power to fill out a
I totally get what you're
$12.95.
saying, but like my thinking, and that's like obviously very personal, but my thinking would be like, okay, you know, like I would hire somebody to do this, streamline the crap out of everything, and just have a 10-hour per week job that brings me really good revenue and just chill, right? That's my thinking. But I think you wanted like more out of your just maybe, you know, like out of your job, like just to prove yourself more, right? Like you want more out of business. You probably didn't want to relax necessarily.
Part of it was the mental stimulation, because even if I hired somebody and they did it for me, okay, I got to pull up a screen and compare. Okay, did they type in the passport right? Did they spell their mom's name right? You know what I mean? So
yeah, you still need to check. Yeah.
The big thinking was, is this really how I want to be spending my time each day? And number two, at the time, I really didn't want to build a big team, right? Interviewing, hiring, training, managing, it just didn't appeal to me. Building a big law firm didn't appeal to me. And
I can totally relate to that, because it never appealed to me. I mean, maybe when I just started, you know, and that was like first couple of years, maybe I was like thinking about it. But eventually, as I learned more and more about the business, I was like, yeah, that is not for me. Definitely, that's not something I want to do, because that ultimately gives you a lot of just, I don't want to say stress, but a lot of work, right? Because managing operations of a bigger law firm is a lot of work, and you would be working definitely at least 40 hours per week. You're lucky if you're working 40 hours per week, right? So that's something that I never wanted to look into. But I totally understand you in terms of wanting that mental stimulation, because you know, like we're still young, right? Like I don't want to, like right now, my firm is like pretty lean and like it's pretty like just no stress, but it's not like I can just lie down by the pool all day. Like I need to do something with my brain. Like I cannot just do nothing. So what was your next step?
Yeah, well, so keep this in mind too. Everything you just said, plus when I'm dealing with my clients, they were mostly high-tech companies, right? They'd raised a lot of money, they'd, you know, whatever. They're building all these cool, innovative products, automating all this stuff. So in the back of my mind, what started ruminating was, why doesn't this exist for immigration? Why do I have to hire somebody to fill out a form? It's a form, right? It's a PDF. I mean, it's a stupid PDF, the way IRCC built it, and the validation and the errors and blah, blah, blah. But it's form filling. Why do I even have to hire a person to copy paste, right? Or to review, you know, certain basic things. So it was kind of the culmination of all of that. And it took months, right? Like I didn't wake up one day and just, okay, boom, I'm not practicing anymore, right? This was months and months of thinking and ruminating and frustrating and you know what I mean? All that kind of stuff. And I woke up one day and said, screw it, I'm gonna start building immigration technology. And that is kind of what sparked the first iteration of Visto, which was sometime, I think, in like the summer of 2019 or I think near the end of 2019 is actually when the discussions started happening. I was still practicing at the time, and there was a period of time where I was doing both. I was continuing the practice, and I was starting Visto, and eventually got to the point where I realized that I couldn't do both. I could do both, but then each one would have to sacrifice a little bit, right? As you know, as I know, it's hard enough to build one really big successful business. If you try to do two, unless you're Elon Musk, it's very, very difficult, right? So Yeah, that's what kind of led to it, was the frustration and also the inspiration from the other, impressive Canadian tech companies that I saw who were automating other industries, and I thought, why couldn't we have the same in ours?
And when you were practicing, like, have you tried any softwares that were like, and we're not going to name them, but we all know that there are other softwares that appeared before this.
Well, everybody
right?
knows the names. Like I'm not going to name them, but you could count them on one hand, right?
Yeah, exactly.
One of the problems with Canada is I'll just put it bluntly, there's not a ton of innovation in Canada. It's a small market. There's not that much funding available. Quite frankly, when you compare Canada to a country like the US, people are very conservative. So what does that mean? It's harder to raise money from them. It's harder to sell innovation to them, which means it's harder to build a tech company and raise more money. Like, it's a vicious cycle, right? If it's hard to raise and then it's hard to sell, if it's hard to sell, it becomes harder to raise. And if it's harder to raise, your product might not be as big, so then it's harder to sell. Right? So that's why, for example, and this is like a meme at this point, is where a Canadian founder will jump on a plane and go raise their first 1 or 2 rounds in the US, because that's where it's easier to raise money. Or they'll just go build their company and sell all their stuff in the US. I know many Canadian tech founders that are building tech companies, selling stuff to people in the US. And I think this is a bit of a problem. I mean, we could go down that rabbit hole or not. I know it's not really the main topic of this conversation. But it's difficult. It's difficult in Canada, and that's why in Canadian immigration, we don't have a ton of options. I saw what was out there. I tested some things that were out there, and I didn't think any of them were all that great. Keep in mind, this was also 2020. Some of them have gotten a lot better since then. But, 2019, 2020, there wasn't much that impressed me or that I could implement and like revolutionize my firm. What I was using at the time was mostly Zapier. I was using Google Forms and Zapier and Google Sheets and, Gmail. And I actually built some pretty cool workflows. And this is what inspired a lot of the features that we ended up building at Visto, where I had some pretty cool for a lawyer, right? So I had no coding skills, nothing like that, but a pretty cool workflow where I could send a templated email to a client. They would fill out a form. The form would fill out sheets. There was logic in the sheets, and it would then send a custom follow-up, custom document checklist email to the client, stuff like that. So it was pretty good, but it wasn't to the full potential of what I knew could exist.
Yes, no, I totally get it. But going back to like more about the business side of things, transitioning from one business to a completely different, like tech CEO job, it must have been hard, like not only just mentally from, just mental point of view, but also financially, like to give up that security of, having a pool of companies that already coming to you for global talent stream, and transitioning to the tech company where you have to actually raise funding and raise and sell the product and like start it from just ground up. It must have been really, really difficult. What do you think from just like business ownership point really made you feel that leap makes sense, and that you have faith that leap of starting a tech company that would eventually pay off? Like because not all entrepreneurs are that much of a risk takers, right? Would you consider yourself as a really risk taker, or do you think that this decision is just based on like rationalized approach and it didn't feel insecure?
It's a tough question. The answer is I was too naive to know any better, and it was actually a stupid. I've made every mistake you can imagine as a tech founder. If I could go back, if I could wind the clock back 4 years, I would have done it 100% differently.
Really?
Yeah. It's like that old saying, right? Which is like, thank God I was that naive, because if I knew how hard it was to start this business, and this even goes for like a law firm too, right? But I found especially with tech, if I knew how hard it was going to be, I may not have done it. Or at least now, knowing what I know, I would have done it very differently. And to one of your points, like in tech, you don't have to raise money. It kind of depends on the type of tech company you want to build, and or if you can afford to bootstrap it, right? Like there are many approaches you can take to building a tech company. We have ended up raising money. Raising money's hard. It's not easy. It's not fun. It's pulling you away from like we have enough to do building a business, right?
Yeah.
Imagine basically putting everything on pause, because raising money is unless you're like Mark Zuckerberg or unless you have a rocket ship or a huge crazy network, or mom and dad can write you a check. Raising money is a full-time job, which means if you're spending time raising money, you're not building your product, you're not selling it, you're not marketing it. You know what I mean? So I would do it 100% differently, and we can go into how and why. But the answer to your question, Olena, is, and I'm not shy to say this, I was an idiot. I didn't know what the heck I was doing. Tech is so different from building a services business, which is what a law firm is, right? It's a service business. And if I was smart, I would have done it very differently. And we can go into a little bit of how or why. But yeah.
I really appreciate you saying that, because you know what, like a lot of times I have that, and a lot of us have that, like a little bit of imposter syndrome when I feel like everybody around me know how to do this and I'm the only one who doesn't know. And I feel like, it's just very encouraging to hear from you that, like, look, I didn't know anything, but things are working out, right? So do you think it was like, now, what is it, 4 years? You said Visto exists for 4 years now. Do you think it was worth it for you to make that leap?
I think it was worth it. I don't have regrets, right? So that's an important distinction where, like, if I could go back, I would do it 100% differently, and we would have moved 100% faster and probably been, 10x more successful. But sometimes you have to learn the hard way, right? That's life, right? We get smarter, we get better over time.
Well, yeah, absolutely. No, I totally agree with that. And no, that's absolutely great.
The 4 years, Olena, was basically 2.5 years of struggling to finally thankfully now we're in a really good place. I have, great confidence in our future. We're not going anywhere, all that fun stuff. But it took us like 2.5, 3 years to get anything worth talking about, right? So, it was a grind. It's the one thing I'll mention with regards to tech, or, because I talk to consultants and lawyers all the time who are, I'm thinking about starting this or tech that, right? The biggest difference that I learned the hard way, that maybe you won't have to now because I'm giving you a bit of a warning, is launching tech products is so different from service businesses. I don't want to say it's easy, but having done both, right? I spent 3 to 4 years running a law firm. I've now spent 3 to 4 years running a tech company. Same industry, right? So like pretty easy to compare, or pretty good to compare. I'd say it's like a pretty good use case. One is 100 times harder than the other. You can you don't even need a website. You could set up an Instagram page and start a law firm today and start making money tomorrow.
Yep.
With tech, it's a whole other ball game. You got to start and build it. You got to find product market fit. You got to convince people it's interesting. You got to convince people to pay for it. And then here's the fun part. Sometimes you have to convince the people who have already paid for it to even use it, right? Because you can't imagine how many people, oh yeah, this looks cool, it's so innovative, blah, blah, blah. They sign up, and then sometimes they don't even use it for a wide variety of reasons, right? But just know, if you are someone out there thinking about, switching into tech, building a tech product, it's going to cost you 5 times as much to build it as you think. It's going to take 5 times as long to build it as you think, unless you have a really good developer. We have like Alex. I got lucky. My CTO, Alex, by the way, it's going to take 5 times as long as you think to find a good co-founder, especially if you're not a techie. I lucked out. I have a fantastic CTO, and it's going to be 5 times harder to sell than you think it will be. So I'm not trying to come out here and say, hey, nobody start tech companies, but just that's the lesson I learned the hard way. Maybe a few people don't have to because of me.
You know what? It's funny that you brought it up, because in the last 6 months, I talked to several RCICs and immigration lawyers who mentioned that, oh, I want to start this, kind of tech company, that tech company, because they see all these gaps in our work and, in our industry, and they are thinking about it. And I'm like, how come all these people are starting tech companies? Is it that easy? Is it that easy to secure funding and, to just like switch like that? Because again, it's such a different skill set, especially because none of these people that I talk to come from like actual IT background, right? So it's a huge learning curve. But I guess, I think it's great to be innovative, and it's great that we have all this interest in starting tech companies. But yeah, it's interesting what you said. There is a lot of upfront, I guess, cost to start a tech company in the sense of your time, your effort, and of course, money as well.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing is it's just become popular because of the media, right? I mean, you see all the big flashy stories, especially now with AI, right? Oh, this and this company raised that, and this company bought, this company for that. If there was news for all the startups that failed, oh my God, you wouldn't have enough time in the day to read it, right? Because we see the 1%. You see in the news the 1%. What you don't see is the graveyard, right? Of like, if you're like me and you like, I love Reddit. I don't know if you do, but I love Reddit.
Yes.
And some of the subreddits I love are related to tech companies. And every day I see threads. Hey, I built this product. I'm struggling to sell it. Hey, I'm looking for a co-founder to help me with marketing, sale, blah, blah. Like the number, and I'm not saying this because I'm happy about it, or I think like you, I think we need innovative people to build innovative stuff. But the number of tech companies that have died or not made it way outnumbers the number of tech companies that are able to even raise money to begin with, let alone become profitable, find an exit, or go public, or whatever it might be. So just keep that in mind. That's why we have conversations like these, right?
No, it's very interesting to me because you start, two businesses in completely different two fields, and it's very interesting. So now, with your experience of having two businesses, can you tell me what would be your recommendation to any just business owner, period? Of course, this podcast is for RCICs, lawyers, but from just business owner's point of view, what's the biggest lesson you learned in the last 10 years?
I think one thing I never appreciated is, and we're seeing this more and more over the last 1 or 2 years as the tech industry has actually adjusted and come back down to earth, is that cash is king. If you have a cash flowing immigration firm, that is gold, right? And I say this as someone who had that and gave it all up and went to tech. So I basically, threw myself down the stairs, right? Cash is king because not in like capitalist, I just want to be rich and starve all the poor people. Money can solve pretty much any problem you have in business, and not in life, a lot of life, but especially in business. You're too busy, hire somebody. You're still busy, get better tech. Work with a firm to build your own tools, blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean? You don't understand the new regulations? Okay, go pay an expert to tell you what it means. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So number one, cash is king. Number two, especially for immigration firms specifically, is respect rule number one, but also realize that net profit trumps revenue. Because, like I said, so at Visto, we sell software to immigration firms. That's all I do. I talk to consultants. I talk to lawyers. Some of them are one person. Some of them are 25 people, right? And everything in the middle, obviously. And what some firm owners don't realize is if you have a law firm that's doing $450K in revenue, and you're spending 400K of it on staff and tools and marketing and this and that, you're really just working overtime for a $50K salary, right? Maybe that's why you got into business for yourself, but that's not why I start businesses. I start businesses because number one, the freedom, the flexibility of being my own boss, and number two, because of the potential for outsized returns. right? If you're working as an employee, you're capped, right? Whatever your salary is, maybe you get a bonus, maybe you get a small raise next year, whatever. We do this because we could build a firm that does 450 top end, and you take home 300 of it, right? Or whatever, right? The most impressive conversation I ever had is, so here's an example. One firm does 300-ish top end. They have a huge team of staff overseas because it's cheap to hire them. But the founders spend so much time managing all those people, and the profit at the end of the year is less than 100K, right?
Yeah.
Here's the other end of the spectrum. A guy I spoke to works, him and his wife, they do $500,000 a year in revenue, and there's no staff. I guess you pay, in this case, his wife is the staff,
yes.
right?
Yes.
And, okay, whatever, $1,000, $2,000 a month in random expenses. 400 plus K in net income at the end of the year, right? So that's what I think everybody should be working towards, in my opinion, right? Like I said, again, not everything is about money and maximizing net income, but I think we could all agree we're spending a lot of time. It's stressful, like you said, now more so than ever. You want to make money off of that so you can spend it on your family, treat yourself once in a while, travel, blah, blah, blah. I think really comes down to like people and processes, aka like technology, which we can talk about.
Yeah, I'm so happy you said and you brought up this point, because that's the whole premise of like what I'm teaching, how I'm communicating with RCICs. That's literally lesson number 1 right here of my introduction of my course, is that look, you don't want to probably run a $1 million business, because if somebody's running $1 million business, I had this discussion with somebody recently. If somebody's running $1 million business and they have 900,000 expenses, including most of it probably salary, then it's not $1 million business. It's $100,000 business. So don't call it $100,000 business. Don't call it $1 million business, right? And you just couldn't say it better. I totally agree. I also had another conversation with one of the RCICs asking, like, just saying all this kind of stuff and proving the point of the profit, and that we don't want to build a law firm with 20 employees for most part. And she's like, okay, like I get all of that, but I want to grow. I started business because I want to grow. I'm like, okay, why do you want to grow? And she's like, well, because, I want to develop, I want to build business, I want to hire employees. I'm like, okay, why do you want to do that? She's like, well, because I want to, serve clients, I want to process applications. I'm like, okay, why do you want to do that? Well, because I want to make money. I'm like, okay, now we're talking. Because let's not pretend is that business is not for money, because that's why we're here. If we wanted to open nonprofits, let's go ahead, open a nonprofit, right? And that's absolutely great. But we didn't open nonprofits. We all opened in corporations or whatever it is, right? It's a place of business. By the end of the day, we're here to make money for our families and of course help people as well. But absolutely. So tell me, Josh, now your company Visto, you said you're now in a very good position, you're working on new features, you're growing, things are looking great. Tell me what Visto has been up to in 2024.
Yeah, and I could spend a whole extra episode talking about what didn't work, but I'm going to focus on what did, because like I said, 2.5 years of struggle, I don't necessarily want to go back down that, back into those memories. But anyways, so what we do is we sell software to Canadian immigration professionals, consultants, lawyers, and the firms that they operate and manage, and all their staff and all their clients and stuff like that. And there's primarily kind of two, business units, or kind of like two key products, I'll call them, but it's all one product. Number one is application processing. So we have a platform that makes preparing and managing applications really quick. So again, we go back to that $12.95. We have one-click form filling. You're doing a work permit, your client has one online intake form on Visto. They fill it out. They can do it from their smartphone, their laptop, whatever. They can save their progress. You can see all their answers in one place. You can review, edit. You click a button, and instantly all of the PDFs are filled out. So for a work permit, you'd get $12.95, family information, use of rep, Schedule 1 if it applies. We even now have a appendix for work history. So if they have more than 3 work history that fit on 1295, we auto-generate an appendix with extra work history. We support immediate family members, spouse, common law partner, kids, all that kind of stuff. Gathering and managing supporting documents, right? All in one place. You can edit them. We have a one-click merge, compress, and rename, because I know how much time and how much fun it is to manage PDFs and all that kind of stuff. So that's kind of our bread and butter. And because that's what immigration firms do, right? They spend probably, especially your team, if you do have staff, your staff 90% of the time, they're preparing, managing, preparing applications to submit them. The second line, which we're actually getting more into and is exciting me even more, because I think this is where the industry is going, is our AI Copilot. So what we've done is we've built, if you've used ChatGPT, kind of like a ChatGPT, but for Canadian immigration. And the reason for that is if you've used it, you know that some of the shortcomings of something like a ChatGPT are it might only be trained up until data from, for example, today is July the 3rd of 2024, and OpenAI is only trained on up to September of 2023, right? Now, it does have capabilities to go search the live internet for you, but if it doesn't, it might be relying on data from September 2023. It might be relying on Olena's blog post from 2018, which was probably a great blog post, but it might be outdated, or it might be somebody's bad blog post that's incorrect, right? So we've built a custom algorithm and custom database of only Canadian government information. So Canada.ca, we just started adding provincial PNPs, right? So we have BC, Ontario, Alberta, Manitoba, Saskatchewan, all the government information and data there. We just added some more operational manuals covering everything you can think of, right, in terms of Canadian immigration questions and research. We'll be adding case law shortly, and we're fusing that in with document generation now. So you can upload your retainer template, submission letter template, invitation letter template, reference letter template, and cross-reference AI plus your client information to draft custom documents. So I'm really excited about that. I think that's the future. I think along the themes of this conversation that you and I are having, which is how do we build a streamlined immigration firm that can be successful while also letting us live the life that we want? I don't think people realize that within the next 6 to 12 months, AI is going to be so powerful that it's going to be easier than ever to have those things because of how much easier it'll be to practice. So,
yes, yeah. Absolutely. I'm happy that you guys moving this way. And do you know, I'm just purely wondering here, if any other immigration software is also trying to integrate AI, or like, are they also moving towards that? Or is it something that you guys kind of, considering as a competitive advantage?
Well, it's definitely a competitive advantage because I haven't seen anything better. I'm biased, so do your research, right? Take everything I'm saying with a grain of salt. Yeah. But I'm also pretty apprised of what's going on in the industry. I have colleagues and friends sending me links. Hey, have you seen this? Hey, have you seen that? I definitely haven't seen a chat bot as powerful as ours that's Canadian immigration specific. I haven't seen other platforms doing much with AI yet. I'm sure they're working on stuff, because if you're not, I think you're crazy. But again, I'm biased. I know the big players like the LexisNexuses and stuff like that definitely are, but they're not so niche, right? Like we are very niche. We only do Canadian immigration stuff. So I'm keeping up to it. It's kind of like a mix of, number one, I do try to stay up to date on what else is out there, but we also keep our head down and just keep building, because we have, number one, the vision. Like, one thing I have gotten quite good at, if I can pat myself on the back, is now that I've spent 4 years building software, I've gotten quite good of merging my expertise in Canadian immigration with my knowledge of tech and helping us drive product and what could be built next and how it could save our immigration firms the most time. Because there's a lot of options. You could build 100 things, right? What do we work on today, right? That's half the battle. What do we build and when? So that's been kind of nice. And then also, because we've made so much progress in the last year, we have hundreds of immigration firm staff that are using our platform every week. So we stay very hands-on. I'm talking to our clients. We're getting feedback. We're asking, hey, what do you want? Like 3 weeks ago, we sent out a survey. Hey, we're building this new document generation tool. And it had like 3 multiple choice questions. It was super short because I don't want to bug our clients, right? The law firms are busy enough. You guys have enough work to do. 3 multiple choice questions, bing, bang, boom. And now we get really good feedback on how we can design our new features, keeping in mind exactly what they want. And those results were actually kind of surprising, which was helpful for us. So anyways, hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. No, it's absolutely great. I wanted to share with you one story because I just recently finished my spring cohort of my business coaching, and one of the students there, she recently signed up for Visto. And just for anybody who doesn't know, for my practice, I don't use any like particular softwares. But that's why I'm very neutral about like everything, right? But she signed up for Visto, and she was sharing with me, and that's maybe something you can consider as well. She was sharing with me that it was so useful for her, but in a way that it was surprising for me, because she said, I recently hired my legal assistant, and she's like, I'm so busy, I cannot train, I don't have time to train. I just hired her and I put her in front of Visto and I said, work. And she said, you know what? It's been amazing because Visto has essentially been training legal assistant for her because it has a structure, right? Like it has a workflow, it has a structure.
Yeah.
So she almost like used it for kind of like training purposes. So she didn't like, I cannot, because I don't use any softwares, I cannot do it. Because if I hire somebody, I actually need to show them all the SOPs and show them all the stuff and like spend some time training them to make sure they're on board, because I don't have that ultimate platform that would be like, here's the platform, go do your job. So I think that way is very useful as well when you're managing your staff.
Yeah, so that's the biggest differentiator between what we built at Visto and anything else I've seen, which is we build custom workflows. So when you sign up to Visto, you can log in and click on work permit and click start. And we've automated all the forms, we've built the forms, we built the checklist out of the box. So really good for training in that regard. And secondly, we're very hands-on. I provide the training still. So for example, Olena hires Sally from Victoria. You could send me an email, hey Josh, just hired Sally. Can you jump on a call with her and train her on Visto? And I will, right?
Oh, wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, we'll get them up and listen, how about a special podcast discount for Olena? We'll call it Olena 100.
What?
100% off your first month if you're ready to get started, Olena. You let me know off air, and we'll take it from there.
Okay, yeah. So email me the discount code and I'll put it in the description.
Maybe we'll actually, well, that one's for you specifically, but maybe because we don't actually offer free trials because we are very hands-on, right? You're working directly with me. What we can do is we can get a special discount code. So maybe off air we'll discuss, because I also have to be off air in 5 minutes. Yes. But maybe we'll discuss and we'll come up with like a 2 or 3 month intro coupon just specifically for your listeners, because I know that they're great, and we could make it more worth their while.
Absolutely. So yes, guys, please go in the description of this podcast and you will see what me and Josh came up with for you as a present for listening to this episode. Well, thank you so much, Josh. It was a pleasure as usual. I will let you go, but thank you so much for attending, and I hope to keep in touch with you.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me on. I hope that people found it helpful. And if you do want to learn more, feel free to get in touch. Obviously, our website, if you want to check out the product, is visto.ai. And I'm pretty active on LinkedIn, right? So even if you want to just connect, chat, I post relatively often, similar to Olena, who I follow very closely. So LinkedIn is a great place to find me as well. You won't find many people with my last name, so I'm pretty easy to find there.
Yes. All right. Well, thank you so much, and I'll see you soon. Thank you. Bye.
My pleasure.